What's up, guys? Welcome back to the second episode of the Fanatics podcast. I'm Nathan. I'm here with Spencer again. Want to say hello?
What's up, Fanatics?
We appreciate y'all listening again. Hope y'all tuned into the first episode. It was a good episode. We had Robbie, Mr. Hot Takes, on there. He had some really hot takes. Would you say so? Extremely hot takes.
Scorching, just like Dexter Williams getting 100 yards on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty bold.
Extremely scorching. And so for this podcast, episode number 2, we're going to go over some of the news that broke today. We're going to cover our rankings, which you can find at the fffanatics.com. Website's actually been blowing up. We really appreciate it. Getting a lot of views. We're also going to hit some Twitter questions. People commenting on our post and messaging us. We really appreciate it. Interacting with you guys is awesome. So starting out, what do you want to hit first?
All right, so Lions quarterback Matthew Stafford has been placed on the reserve COVID-19 list. What does that mean for Detroit's wide receivers and their running backs for this week if he is out?
Assuming he's out, they're probably going to roll with Chase Daniel, and that's never good. Kenny Golladay is also going to be out. So if you're starting Marvin Jones, I think that's pretty risky. I think T.J. Hawkinson's risky as well. It doesn't look like a very promising offense this week. They're going to be playing in Minnesota. So, hopefully Minnesota gets up and then Detroit's forced to throw. Otherwise, they're going to be leaning on Adrian Peterson and DeAndre Swift. Out of those two, I think you got to lean Swift just in case they get behind. Other than that, it just doesn't look very promising. What do you think?
If Matthew Stafford doesn't play, I don't think you could trust any of the wide receivers. And actually, the running back who I think would get most volume if Matthew Stafford didn't play would be Adrian Peterson. I think they would just go with a ground and pound kind of offense. Kerryon Johnson, DeAndre Swift, and Adrian Peterson all getting touches, which is no good. So, if Matthew Stafford doesn't play, I'm on the verge of not starting any Detroit Lions. Another thing is Aaron Jones was deemed questionable for Thursday Night Football. If he goes, obviously you're starting him, but just wanted to announce that. Another thing is Michael Thomas returned to practice today. Let's hope he can get in a full week of practice. He's just been so unreliable this year with injuries and suspensions. So assuming if he does go this week, how does that impact New Orleans offense and their fantasy value?
Well, I think it definitely draws attention away from Alvin Kamara, and I think that'll also mean a little less volume for him as well. You can see last year when Michael Thomas was in there, Drew Brees was just forcing the ball to him regardless. They get in these, 3rd and 5 situations, and everybody knows where the ball is going. Even though it's his first game back, I don't see any reason why that wouldn't continue. I think people like Jared Cook, you can drop their value down a little bit. Alvin Kamara, you're obviously still playing him. He's one of the best running backs. Latavius Murray, he's pretty much just touchdown dependent at this point. And then anybody else in the offense, even Drew Brees, a little questionable to start, but
I think they might be getting back Emmanuel Sanders this week also. So
yeah, but I don't know. I just think Drew Brees hasn't been consistent. He's been solid, but from a fantasy perspective, nothing.
It certainly helps Drew Brees' fantasy value.
It definitely helps Drew Brees. He's got more options, especially if Sanders is healthy as well. But Michael Thomas, assuming he's healthy, you got to fire him in there. You've been waiting. He's been on your bench. You got to put him in.
Yeah. So Calvin Ridley, John Brown, Kenyon Drake, and Alvin Kamara all did not practice Wednesday. Alvin Kamara came out and said that his injury is not serious. He will be on the practice field tomorrow, and he will be playing Sunday. Yeah,
I think he stubbed his toe.
Yeah, he said something like that. All right, so we got a question on Twitter asking us what is some of the biggest first and second round bust from fantasy drafts. So I know you got a few, Nathan. You want to hit those real quick?
Yeah, well, it's really easy to just pinpoint people who've gotten hurt, like Saquon Barkley, people like that. Joe Mixon's dealt with his injury problems, Miles Sanders, Austin Eckler. All these people are going in the first 2 rounds. But as far as people who have been playing and just really underperformed, for the rest of the season, Ezekiel Elliott's going to be tough to maintain that first-round value. People are waiting on Nick Chubb. Kenyon Drake's been real disappointing. He had one good week, but other than that, it's been rough. Is there anybody you've seen that's not lived up to your expectations?
Well, certainly Joe Mixon and all of them, but another one is DJ Moore. I felt like he's had 2 or 3 good games out of 8 games. From someone who has him on a lot of fantasy teams, he's been very underwhelming. So I'm looking at it right now. There's just been so many people hit with injuries on that whole list. Amari Cooper, now that Dak's out, is being drafted around the 10 to 13 wide receiver range. He's going to be so underwhelming for the rest of the season. I imagine he's in that whole wide receiver 20 to 25 range for the rest of the season.
What about Juju Smith-Schuster? A lot of people were ranking him around, about 30th overall. In most drafts, he was going, usually third round-ish. That's probably about his average. How do you feel about him?
Yeah, he was being drafted as wide receiver 13 to 16. So far, he's been wide receiver 37. His past 4 weeks have been 4 catches for 28 yards, 2 catches for 6 yards, 9 catches for 85 yards, and 7 catches for 67 yards. He's been getting some targets, but, they're just dump-offs, it seems like, drag routes and out routes and stuff like that. And he hasn't been able, to do anything with those. And just Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson emerging, that just hurts him even more.
Yeah, hopefully better days ahead.
Yeah.
What's another question you got for us from Twitter?
All right. So someone asked, is David Johnson worth starting, or do you look to trade him?
Well, David Johnson, his value's been really good. I think in that offense, after getting past the Will Fuller trade drama, I think they can kind of focus in more. Deshaun Watson hasn't really been too great this year. The loss of DeAndre Hopkins really being felt. So I think that offense starts to click a little more. I think Brandon Cooks is coming to his own. And I think that's only good news for David Johnson. I think he starts to find the end zone a little more.
Yeah, certainly. If you have David Johnson, you're certainly starting him. I don't see any way how you don't start him. But, if you could trade him, he's coming off of, 2 back-to-back 12-point games. If you could trade him for an RB1, certainly do so, but I don't see any way you can right now. He's getting the volume, just not a lot of production.
Yeah, coming up, he's got Jacksonville, he's got Cleveland, he's got New England. So you would hope he'd be able to take advantage of some of those matchups. His playoff schedule, he's got
it's rough.
14 through 16. He's got Chicago and Indianapolis in weeks 14 and 15. So you may want to look long term. Maybe think about trading him before that. If your league has a trade deadline, maybe try and ship him out. I'd definitely try and get bare minimum a high end RB2. Otherwise, it's kind of a lateral move, and you're not really gaining anything.
I have a question. Would you trade him for Todd Gurley?
I would. I think Todd Gurley and that Atlanta offense, they're going to be scoring a lot. I like the Atlanta offense a lot more than Houston's. Even though there's plenty of mouths to feed there. You got Julio, you got Calvin Ridley. I just think the amount of volume they're getting in the red zone, I think you have to prefer Todd Gurley to David Johnson at this point.
What about David Montgomery?
That's a more even question. David Montgomery's getting plenty of work with Tariq Cohen out, but
he's kind of in the same situation as David Johnson. Getting plenty of volume, but just not doing much with it. 1 or 2 touchdowns this year, which is just rough through 8 games.
Yeah, but you got to think that's coming up.
Yeah.
But one thing you may want to consider is they've got Lamar Miller on their practice squad, and later in the season, if David Montgomery isn't playing to what they would hope, maybe they promote Miller. Maybe he steals a couple carries here and there. But you would think that the touchdowns would come up for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Got to agree with that one. Another question we've got is what to do with Tyler Lockett. Do you trade him, or what kind of value are you looking to receive? He's had a 38-point game in the past 4 games, and then he's had 3, 4, and 3. What are you looking to get out of Tyler Lockett?
Well, I think unanimously in pretty much everybody's rankings, he's being ranked in the top 10 every week. So I don't think you settle for anything less than a top 10 receiver. The Seattle offense, we mentioned in the first episode, their defense is terrible. They're going to throw a lot. DK, he's been a monster, and so that's kind of taken some attention away from Lockett. So if they come up against a team that figures out a way to slow down DK, the ball is coming to Lockett. It's a very narrow target tree. The ball gets fed to mainly them too. But yeah, I'd settle for no less than a top 10 receiver. You're looking at people like Adam Thielen, Calvin Ridley, that kind of range. What do you think?
Would you trade him for Keenan Allen?
That's a tough one. Keenan Allen, I think I would, just because I think you can get a little more consistency from Keenan Allen. Justin Herbert's been a stud. He loves to look for Keenan Allen. And you won't have to deal with quite as many of those games where like Tyler Lockett is getting basically no looks when DK has like 15 targets. There's not really those kind of games coming for Keenan Allen.
Would you trade him for Allen Robinson?
No, absolutely not. Just because the Bears' offense is nowhere near as stout as the Seattle offense. Nick Foles hasn't been consistent. He's been better than Trubisky, but not consistent. And I just don't see A-Rob getting as many looks as Lockett.
All right, another question we've got a lot this week is what the heck is going on with Jonnu Smith? The past 3 games, he's had 1 catch for 13 yards, 1 catch for 9 yards, and 2 catches for 29 yards. Are you panicking, or are better days to come for Jonnu Smith?
Well, the sad reality is the tight end position is so slim. Unless you've got one of the top, maybe 4 or 5 guys, you're just kind of hoping that somebody gets injured and something pops up on the waiver wire. Like, for instance, this week with Jordan Reed getting his opportunity in place of George Kittle, maybe you spring for him and just hope. But with someone like Jonnu Smith, I think you have to wait. You're not going to get any value from him in trading right now because he's been down the past few weeks. But he's got that upside. He's very explosive. And so hopefully better days are ahead.
Yeah, you have him as tight end 4 for this week. I have him at tight end 12. So I'm not nearly as high as you are on him. Another one we got is, if you were looking to trade Jonnu Smith, do you wait? Do you do it right now before his value goes down even more? Or do you trade him, after a big game coming up in the future?
I think you got to wait. I mean, right now, with his value being relatively low coming off these bad games, you got to wait. He's obviously got the talent. And if the big game happens, maybe you look to ship him off. But just with how thin, I just don't see you being able to get someone who's going to replace and be maybe in a little bit of an upgrade. I think you just hold on to him.
Who would you rather have the rest of the season, him or Hunter Henry?
I would take Hunter Henry just because the Chargers, like I said, Herbert is looking like a stud. And then Ryan Tannehill, he's handing the ball off to Derrick Henry a whole lot more than Herbert is to like Josh Kelly or Justin Jackson or even Eckler when he gets back. So I think Henry.
Who would you rather have, him or Noah Fant?
That's a tougher choice for sure. I think they're pretty even. I think I'd stick with Jonnu Smith rest of the season just because I don't really trust Drew Lock. I think he's a little too loose with the ball and is going to be giving up opportunities. So I'd ride with Smith.
All right, so we are going to discuss some of our Week 9 rankings. Of course, you can check them out on the website, theFFfanatics.com, and all the other great content we have on that website. All right, so unanimously, we have Russell Wilson at number 1. The first real hiccup in the road, though, is Lamar Jackson is 8th. I ranked him at 9. You ranked him at 7. What has happened to Lamar Jackson?
Well, regardless, he's been a little shaky compared to where you drafted him and what you expected, but he's still a top 10 play every single week. Just his running ability alone is going to get you those fantasy points you want, and it would not surprise me if rest of the season he doesn't finish as a top 5 quarterback. I have him at 7 purely just, off the potential of just that, what I was saying. This week they've got the Colts, which is a tough defense, but Lamar Jackson breaks down any defense. As long as he's secure with the ball and isn't just throwing it wildly like he's been showing sometimes, I think he'll be fine. I think he's an easy top 10 play.
All right, is he a potential buy low target? I'm looking at his fantasy playoff schedule right now. It's Cleveland, Jacksonville, and the Giants.
He is for sure. And the people who have Lamar Jackson
probably drafted him in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah,
and he's QB 13.
Yeah, for sure.
8 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, they drafted him, and so they're probably a little frustrated that they haven't been getting that return.
Yeah, they were probably expecting about 28, 29, 30 points per game, and they're getting 20 points per game. So, they're probably freaking out what to do with Lamar Jackson. Maybe you can swoop in there and, get a really good quarterback on a really good playoff schedule.
Well, let's be clear. 20 points a game, that's still not bad.
No, that's not bad at all.
So,
QB 13, 20 points per game, that's, that just shows how many good quarterbacks there are.
Yeah, so I would stress, if you have him, hold tight. If you have the opportunity to get him, I think you move. I think you move for him.
All right, so you have Cam Newton at 12. I have him at 15. Are you confident in starting Cam Newton this week?
Well, I am, and it's kind of similar to Lamar Jackson, but obviously not to the same extent. His receiving targets have been depleted over the past couple of weeks, and it's such a run heavy team. You think Damon Harris is going to be featured a lot, probably a lot of Rex Burkhead, probably not as much James White just because they're playing the Jets, and so I think they're going to dominate the Jets. I think their defense holds up, and when they get close to the goal line, I mean, Cam Newton's a touchdown machine, so I don't see how you can't still start him unless you have someone like Deshaun Watson or maybe like a Herbert you picked up. I think you're still starting him.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. With Christian McCaffrey likely returning this week from injured reserve, we have Teddy Bridgewater at QB 13. Why is that?
Well, I mean, Christian McCaffrey is going to boost any value in the offense. There's a big difference from dumping it off to Mike Davis. No disrespect to him. He's been pretty good. But you give it to Christian McCaffrey, and you got the big play threat every single time. Would you agree with that it would boost his value?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Do you think it opens more things up for DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson now that teams are focusing more on, a top three back in the backfield?
Yeah, no doubt. I think you're going to see more deep shots, even though that's not necessarily Teddy's, forte. I think you'll see a little bit less of Curtis Samuel just because he was getting some touches out of the backfield where now it's just going to be solely McCaffrey, in my opinion. Ian Thomas, still kind of irrelevant, to be honest. But Robbie Anderson, I still think you start him strong. I still think you start DJ Moore strong. And Teddy, I mean, he's that borderline, maybe QB1, QB2 range. I'd still lean towards QB2, but I think his stock is improving.
Yeah, we have him as a high-end QB2 this week. So, I mean, he's a pretty good start. All right, so you have Tua in at your QB 22. I do not have him inside my top 25. You are most likely not starting him unless you're in a 2-quarterback league.
Right.
So what do you think? What do you think happens to that Miami offense that looked so dead last week?
Yeah, the score of the game is definitely deceiving. Their defense and special teams won them that game. Tua, I don't even think broke 100 yards. It just looked dysfunctional. They're really missing Ryan Fitzpatrick. Sorry, I've been watching golf. And so I think this week not having Myles Gaskin definitely hurts Tua because he's going to be expected to throw more. What do you think that does for Devontae Parker?
I think Ryan Fitzpatrick just aired it out. He didn't really care if it was an interception or, if the offense came down with it.
Very true.
I think Tua, as I saw last week, he was kind of dumping the ball off. He didn't really air it out. And Devontae Parker's kind of like that go up and get it kind of guy. So, I definitely think Devontae Parker's probably a flex play, at most high-end wide receiver 3. With Myles Gaskin being out, I don't think you could start anybody else in that offense unless Mike Gesicki, and you got no better options than that. Speaking of Mike Gesicki, you have him at tight end 14. I have him at tight end 14 too. So what do you think about him?
Well, I mean, last week I believe he had one catch for about 9 yards. I believe that can be a little deceiving because Tua did look his way, but Tua in general didn't have a good game. So I think you still can have some trust in Mike Gesicki. But if you have another option, I would sit him until he proves it to you that Tua has a good connection with him. Because I still think it's going to be rough. I still think they're going to be looking towards their defense to carry them. But tight end is so thin. Maybe you take a shot with Gesicki, but if you have someone else, maybe you picked up someone like Jordan Reed. I think you start him over Gesicki. Maybe you have like a Hayden Hurst, Jimmy Graham, that kind of range. You're definitely starting them and just kind of hold tight on Gesicki. Yeah,
he's only had one plus 30-yard game since week 2. So, he has been struggling mightily. I think he's very touchdown dependent at this point unless, like you were saying, Tua shows that he has a nice connection with him.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so let's move to our running backs. You have Dalvin Cook at 1. I have Christian McCaffrey at 1. With Christian McCaffrey being at 1 and 2 for us, do you think Mike Davis takes any of his shine away?
No, we kind of mentioned this in episode 1 of our podcast, but I just don't see it. McCaffrey's way too good. way too talented. Maybe there's a little rust. Maybe he's got to get up to speed, and Mike Davis, takes maximum 4 or 5 carries. I just don't see it. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Christian McCaffrey is the best back in fantasy when he's healthy. I don't think there's really any argument to that. Maybe there is with Dalvin Cook of how he's playing, but yeah, I agree. You can expect high-end RB1 production if you have Christian McCaffrey in your lineup and he's on the field.
Right.
All right, so we got Alvin Kamara at RB3. That's with Michael Thomas coming back. You talked about it earlier. Do you think that hurts Alvin Kamara a little bit? But just how he's been playing this year, I don't think you can move him outside of your top, 4 or 5.
Yeah, I think very least when the bye weeks are over, very least you can put him at 5. I mean, he's been incredible this year. You're definitely starting him. There's no doubt about that. People may try and come trade for him if he has a little dip with Michael Thomas, but I think you hold firm on him. Dude's an absolute stud. They look for him all the time. And with Drew Brees getting older, the ball is not going quite as far down the field. They're going to keep looking for Kamara. And they got a great schedule for it. They're going to be getting in more and more shootouts. I think you just keep putting Kamara in your top 5 each week. There's no doubt. All right, so let's focus more on Chase Edmonds. What's your thoughts on him?
Well, I have him at RB7. You have him at RB13. I am super high on Chase Edmonds. He has Miami this week. They looked good last week, but besides that, they haven't looked really good against the run. And the only thing that was holding back Chase Edmonds was Kenyon Drake. And now that he's not there, I think he's a top 10 running back every week. He's a for sure starter, and I think he's an RB1. What do you think?
I wouldn't go as high as RB1. Last season, he did show signs that he could handle that full workload. Like you said, they got a home game against Miami. Miami's defense looked pretty good last week. He's a great pass-catching back. I don't know. I just got to see it first. I got to see him really dominate the touches in that backfield this season. I think it's a whole new look with DeAndre Hopkins because last year, it was Christian Kirk or Larry Fitzgerald. And so I think with more targets going to Hopkins, does that take away from Edmonds a little bit? I don't know. I still think he's good. I think he's a high in RB2, but I got to see it first.
Yeah, for sure. I think that opens up the run a little bit more that Hopkins is there now. Another thing is Ezekiel Elliott has a really tough matchup versus Pittsburgh this week. We have him at running back 8. What do you think about that? Are you confident in starting Ezekiel Elliott as a RB1 this week?
Well, my reason for having him that high in my rankings, and I've seen plenty of people rank him much lower. I even saw somebody put him in the 30s. I thought that was a little too low.
Yeah, that's way too low.
Maybe a little overreaction. But Pittsburgh's defense is no joke. Let's not get that wrong. But my reason for putting him that high is he's got to be their main option. He's got to be good for him. Otherwise, they have no chance. And Pittsburgh's going to walk into Dallas and just absolutely destroy them. So
yeah, who are they starting at quarterback this week? Do they even know yet? Is it Cooper Rush or?
Well, I think right now it's probably Rush, which that doesn't sound very encouraging.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be an Ezekiel Elliott show, and if he doesn't perform, then Tony Pollard's going to get some work, and it's just going to be ugly.
Actually, it's Garrett Gilbert. I just looked at that, so wow, that is rough. Are you starting any wide receivers in that offense?
If you've got Amari Cooper on your team, I think you're in a position where you have to, but everybody else I would not.
Yeah. All right, so another one is Jonathan Taylor at RB17 for us. Are you confident in starting him, with his lackluster workload he had last week?
If you tune into episode 1, you heard Mr. Hot Takes himself, Robbie, talk about how Jonathan Taylor
was an RB5.
Top 5 running back rest of the season. I don't buy it like he does. He's got a really tough matchup in Baltimore this week. Baltimore comes to Indy, but tough regardless. I don't see it. And last week, there was news of him dealing with an injury. Wilkins looked good. Hines looked good. So I don't know. I think right now against Baltimore, maybe a low-end RB2. What's your thoughts?
What about any other back in that offense? Are you starting them? It would have to be a deep league, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd have to be pretty deep. I think last week was more of a fluke. And then, to reiterate, Baltimore, you got to stay clear.
Yeah, that's a huge – they will be down a lot. So, it might be a Nyheim Hines game if you're in a PPR league.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just don't trust Hines against Baltimore. Hines did look good, don't get me wrong, but I still don't see how you can trust him.
All right, so you have Damian Harris at 14. I have him at 21. Why are you so high on Damian Harris?
Well, this kind of goes with Cam Newton. They're playing the Jets. I expect them to kind of rebound from the disappointing finish against Buffalo. I think they're going to steamroll the Jets. I think the Jets already have their mind set on Trevor Lawrence. They'd probably put him in there if they could. I think, and also Damian Harris has showed just how talented he is. He warrants those 20 touches a game. He hasn't gotten that yet, but what better time? A divisional game. They need to win to catch up to Buffalo, even to catch up to Miami. I mean, who would have thought? But
Yeah,
I just see
second in the AFC East.
Yeah, it's kind of what are we living in? This is 2020, I guess. And so I think you just feed Damian Harris. He looked way too good to not give him the ball. What do you think?
He did look good. There's just so many backs in that offense that it's just so tough to confidently start a running back week in, week out. You also have Antonio Gibson at RB11. You almost have him inside your top 10. Why is that?
Well, I mentioned this last week as well, or I'm not last week, last episode. Gibson's a stud. I mean, they have to give him the ball more if they want a chance. They're playing the Giants in Washington. Very winnable game. And so I think if they get ahead, they're going to feed Gibson even more. But if it's a shootout, you'll see some McKissick mixed in there. But Gibson's just so talented. I don't see how you can leave him out of your lineup.
All right. So you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire at running back 7. And you have Le'Veon Bell at RB24. Combined, we have Le'Veon Bell at RB23 and Clyde at RB10. So is there that big of a gap in between Clyde and Le'Veon at this point, you think?
Well, I mean, I can see why you might think that. Bell, it wouldn't surprise me if he steals a touchdown here or there. But I do think Clyde's the better option in that backfield. They're playing Carolina and Kansas City. So I think you'll see a mix of both because I think Carolina can be competitive because they're getting McCaffrey back. And so I think you'll see plenty of Clyde, plenty of Le'Veon Bell. But I just trust Clyde more because that's what I've seen. And so until that changes and Le'Veon Bell dominates, I'm still sticking with Clyde. So let me ask you about a running back. The brand new team in the NFL, San Francisco Injury Reserve. The whole team is hurt. There's something other than COVID going around there. Everybody's got the injury bug. Who do you start at running back this week? McKinnon or Hasty?
Well, I have Hasty at RB12. I'm very high on him. Green Bay is allowing the most points a game to running backs this year. And while he does have McKinnon in that backfield, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk are both not playing. So they're going to be relying on the run, kind of similar to something you saw in the NFC Championship last year versus Green Bay, where they passed the ball 9 times and ran it down their throat. I'm pretty sure Raheem Mostert had 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. I'm not saying JaMychal Hasty will have anything like that, but I'm expecting a big day out of Hasty for sure. What do you think?
Well, I think Green Bay giving up the most points to running back is heavily skewed because of what Dalvin Cook did to them last week. I mean, that's borderline illegal what he did to them. I'm surprised they broadcast that. But saying that, my trust is in Jerick McKinnon because I think Green Bay is going to get up. And so I think they're going to have to pass more, and I think that means more McKinnon than Hasty. But I can easily see why you would want Hasty.
Yeah. Who would you rather start in that Chargers backfield? Justin Jackson or Josh Kelly? Are you confident in starting either one?
Recently, Jackson's been way better. But Josh Kelly, I mean, he got a lot of volume even when Eckler was there. But Justin Jackson, I think, is just kind of separated from himself, and he's a much better pass catcher. So I think you're still sticking with Jackson. We just got a tweet in. I'm going to hit you with it right on the spot.
All right.
Would you trade DK Metcalf for Michael Thomas?
DK Metcalf's just been so good this year, and Michael Thomas has an injury history so far.
I mean, DK's been unreal, and Michael Thomas, you got to see it first, right?
Yeah. Based off what we've seen in the past, I would probably take Michael Thomas for the rest of the season.
Really?
Just based off what we've seen. I'm very scared about, the injury problems he's had and other problems he's had. But, I mean, last year he outscored any other wide receiver about, how many points was it? 70 or 80?
I mean, it was insane. If I remember correctly, he had about, 1,700 yards?
Yeah, I mean.
But I just don't see him being that dominant. I think they have a more focus on Alvin Kamara this season. And, I mean, DK's been blown away. I mean, even the best corners, apart from Patrick Peterson, who kind of had his number, he's been destroying every team. And I don't know. I just don't see that happening. I just don't see Michael Thomas outperforming DK rest of the season. I could be wrong. He's complete stud, but we'll see.
All right. So Mark Ingram didn't practice today. If he doesn't go this weekend, who would you rather have, J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards?
I'd take J.K. Dobbins. I think he's just a better player in general.
I see he's RB26 for you. How much higher would you move up if Mark Ingram doesn't go? Because I have him at 24. If Mark Ingram doesn't go, I'd have to move him in that 15 to 18 range.
So you would put him inside your top 20?
Yeah, for sure. He was just so good. Let me pull up his stats. But he had 15 carries for 113 yards. And, I think they're going to take notice of that. And such a run-heavy offense, I could see him getting anywhere from 15 to 22 touches.
Well, I could definitely see that. And since Lamar Jackson's been a little bit looser with the ball this year, my big concern this week is they're playing the Colts, who, like the Ravens, have a very good defense this year.
Third most points per game allowed to running backs.
Third most or third least?
Third least.
Yeah, but I just don't see it. I mean, I don't see him being inside my top 20 if Mark Ingram for sure doesn't play. I think he's the best running back there, much better pass catcher than Gus Edwards. But, I mean, they love to rotate their running back, so he's not a top 20 play for me.
You don't think so?
No.
All right, so Leonard Fournette or Ronald Jones this week?
Oh, this is a coin flip every week. Ronald Jones losing a fumble last week really did something to his value, especially the second half of that game. It just seemed like it was the Leonard Fournette show. And I kind of think that continues. They're playing the Saints, week one rematch. I think it could be a shootout. And Leonard Fournette's a better pass-catching back. With LaShawn McCoy out of the picture, he's kind of their go-to in those situations. Maybe Ronald Jones, has a bounce back. But until he proves it to me that he's, clearly ahead of Fournette, I'm sticking Fournette. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd have to go Leonard Fournette just based off what we saw versus the Giants. He got way more volume. So, yeah, I'd probably lean towards Fournette. So, Phillip Lindsay also did not practice Wednesday. You have Melvin Gordon at RB16, and we have him at RB18. How high up would you move him if Phillip Lindsay doesn't go and he has that backfield all to himself?
I don't know. I mean, that's a tough question because he's been kind of inconsistent. I don't know. I'd probably keep him right there. They're playing in Atlanta. Maybe he moves up one or two spots, nothing crazy. But I still think he's RB2. Atlanta's defense has been very susceptible, but Atlanta's got a great offense. Maybe they get ahead. They're playing at home. They need to win if they want to have any chance at making the playoffs. So I think Drew Lock maybe airs it out more than usual this game, and Melvin Gordon kind of sticks to his RB2 value.
Yeah, I'd say if Phillip Lindsay doesn't go, I'd probably move him around that Todd Gurley to David Montgomery range. So, I mean, if Phillip Lindsay does go this week, are you confident in starting him anyway?
Phillip Lindsay?
Yeah.
At best, he's a flex.
In PPR.
Yeah, at very best, he's a flex. But he's very capable. I mean, Denver loves to rotate their running backs as well. Just like Baltimore, they'll throw guys in there.
Yeah, he had 6 carries for 83 yards with a catch and a touchdown. The touchdown came off of an 86-yard touchdown. So if you take that away, he had 5 carries for -3 yards besides that one big run. So, I mean, that just shows – that one big run just shows that he had a really good game when he really didn't outside of that big run. So, I don't think you could trust Phillip Lindsay at this point.
Yeah, I think I agree.
All right. So we talked about it yesterday. We'll talk about it again right now. You do not have Matt Breida in your top 30. I have him at RB27. Why is that?
Just the offense looks so dysfunctional. I mean, I got to see it first. Matt Breida this season, he's been, the fill-in back for Myles Gaskin. Not even really like a full-time pass-catching back. I mean, how do you think he's going to do?
I think he is at best a flex play. Maybe in PPR leagues. I'd have to see first, though. I don't know. They have Jordan Howard back there, and they also have a rookie named Lynn Bowden Jr. I've been telling you about him. I'm super high on him. I don't think he'll really factor in, though, this soon. Just steer clear from the Miami backfield for this week, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you got to keep in mind Matt Breida is going to be a 3-week rental, like, at best. Because when Gaskin comes back, he's been way too good. There's no way Breida takes it from him.
All right, so off to the Buffalo running backs. We have Devin Singletary coming in at RB22, and we have Zach Moss coming in at RB27. Why Singletary over Moss after what we saw last week?
This is purely just based on pass catching ability for me. They're playing Seattle. Seattle's going to score. I think Buffalo scores. I think it's a shootout. I think in total you can expect probably around 60 points between the two of them, between the two teams. I just think Singletary has a better chance of getting in the end zone. Maybe if they get up close to the goal line, they give it to Moss. But I think in general the game flow is going to favor Singletary.
Yeah, while Seattle has been probably one of the worst teams at defending receivers, they've been 13 least amount of points per game given up to running backs. So, I mean, I think it's a Singletary game. Although, if they get down to the goal line, they definitely prefer Zach Moss. That's the thing about Singletary. He's not going to get the goal line work there unless, they're going no huddle or something, or unless it's a passing down.
Mm-hmm.
So, assuming Devontae Freeman plays this week, I have him at RB28. You have him at RB28 also. Are you starting him if he plays this week? I mean, they're playing Washington, who gives up the 9th least amount of points to running backs per game.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the bigger surprises this season is the Washington defense. My concerns with Devontae Freeman is, he's got a long injury history. Wayne Gallman looked pretty good. I mean, he filled in decent, nothing crazy. Didn't blow the world away. But he may warrant some touches away from Devontae Freeman. So I think Devontae Freeman's at best a flex play. Like we said, he's barely inside our top 30 this week. So I could see why you would play him a flex, but there's definitely better options out there. I'm not massive on him. What do you think?
Yeah, that Giants backfield kind of scares me right now. I don't see how you could start any of them unless you're in a super deep league. So,
well, another reason that kind of scares me is the fact that they're playing Washington and Daniel Jones is a walking fumble. There's a chance Washington gets up big, and they have to throw the ball to get back in it. They're going to put in Deion Lewis. Devontae Freeman doesn't have the same kind of pass-catching ability as Deion Lewis, so that kind of concerns me. But, maybe he falls into the end zone. Maybe Freeman gets him a touchdown. I don't know.
All right, so off to wide receivers. You have DK Metcalf at 3. I have him at 6. You're a big Seattle fan. What makes you believe that he'll have a better week than Tyler Lockett, who you have at wide receiver 8?
Well, I mean, Tyler Lockett, he's a stud as well. But DK, nobody's been able to guard him apart from Patrick Peterson. And, I mean, Trey White's good, but I really don't think he's going to even shadow him. And if he does, DK's got a clear height advantage. He's faster. He's stronger. I mean, it's hard to look another way from DK, as dominant as he's been. But, there's a very good chance this is a shootout, and both Lockett and DK have huge games. But if I had to pick one, I'd go with DK. Anybody catching balls from Russ is got the potential for a 20, 30-point week. So
yeah, they're both for sure. You're going to play them. You're going to expect top 10, value out of them. So, yeah. I have Stephon Diggs at wide receiver 2. You have him at 10. My reasoning at 2 is he is facing Seattle, who's giving up the most points per game to wide receivers. That is going to be a shootout, in my opinion. Stephon Diggs, he's had so much volume this year. I think you can for sure count on 10-plus targets. And, I think he's going to have 100-plus yards and maybe even 2 scores. Why do you have him at 10?
Well, I mean, I don't disagree with you there. He's definitely a top 10 play. I just have him towards the back end of my top 10 purely because of the other options. I mean, you look at guys like Adam Thielen. I'd rather have him. Keenan Allen, Michael Thomas, that kind of range. The Tyler Lockett even. I'd rather have them. But no question, Diggs is their main target. He's their main guy. Josh Allen has shown that he loves him. But ranking him number 2, I wouldn't go that high. Maybe it smells like a little bit of bias coming from a Bills fan. I don't know. You could maybe say the same thing about DK, but I don't know. I I think Diggs is going to have a good game, but not like the top 5 games some people are broadcasting.
Speaking of Bills wide receivers, who would you rather have this week, John Brown or Cole Beasley?
In a PPR league, I think you're always going Beasley. John Brown has not looked good this year. He hasn't looked healthy, to be honest.
He also didn't practice Wednesday. He looked good at the start of the year. He's someone who takes the top off of defenses. He can either go for 120 yards and 2 scores, or he can go for 10 yards and 1 catch. He's someone who is such boom or bust, kind of like Ted Ginn almost.
Yeah, I mean that's a very good example. Speaking of Ted Ginn, got released today. Little side note, but John Brown, I mean, he's definitely capable of putting up the donut and being real disappointing. But if there was ever a game where he's going to have to hit some deep balls, it's going to be this game. They got to keep up with Seattle. Seattle's defense is a walking trash can, and they're going to be exploited. Jamal Adams is back, so maybe that intimidates them a little bit, but I just don't see it.
Sticking to the AFC East, if you had to start a Jets wide receiver, who are you starting, Jamison Crowder or Denzel Mims?
That one's easily going to be Jamison Crowder for me, especially in a PPR format, whether it's half point, full point, it doesn't really matter. Sam Darnold loves to look for him. He's this kind of emergency valve. Mims looked okay. Nothing crazy.
Especially if Stephon Gilmore's back, he'll probably be guarding Mims most of the game.
Yeah, because he's normally outside, doesn't really like to cover the slot all that much. I don't know. It's a tough one because I'm personally not a huge fan of either of them. I think they have a lot more. I think Crowder has a lot more value in PPR than non-PPR. The game is in New York. Both teams just haven't looked good. New England knows it needs a win to keep up with Miami and Buffalo. So I think that's why New England's defense brings it this game. And I don't know. I'm not a believer in Crowder this week.
All right. Who are you going, Robbie Anderson or DJ Moore? We have DJ Moore at wide receiver 16. We have Robbie Anderson at wide receiver 12. So you're sticking with Robbie Anderson this week?
I think you're leaning Robbie Anderson just because he's probably going to get more looks. But I think with McCaffrey coming back, maybe both of them take a slight step back. But there's also the same chance that they look for the deep ball more.
They're also facing Kansas City, and
that's very
Kansas
true.
City is going to be up, a lot. So they might be looking for that deep ball to DJ Moore.
That is very true, yeah. But even though there's a separation of, what'd you say, 4 in our rankings? They're separated by 4?
Yeah, 12 and 16.
I still think it's relatively a coin flip at this point just because McCaffrey is going to draw so much attention. I can't blame you. Either one, Robbie Anderson or DJ Moore, whoever you rank higher, can't really blame you.
All right, so the question of the week is what to do with the Bucs wide receivers. We have Mike Evans at wide receiver 20, Chris Godwin at wide receiver 19, and Antonio Brown at wide receiver 23. What do you think if Godwin goes this week and if Godwin doesn't go this week? Personally, for me, I think if Godwin doesn't go, I value Antonio Brown higher than Mike Evans. If Chris Godwin does go, I value him Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and Antonio Brown. What about you?
Wow. Talk about a headache. I mean, 3 studs, no doubt. Godwin playing. I think if all 3 play, I think it goes Godwin, then Evans, then Antonio Brown. We mentioned this in episode 1 as well. I think they're all wide receiver 2s if they're all playing, but all capable of the over 20-point game. I think if Godwin's out this week, I think Mike Evans is just outside the top 10. I think Antonio Brown sticks around the 20 range. Not taking anything away from it just because he could be on a snap count.
All right, so we are assuming, I guess, that Marvin Jones is going to be with Matthew Stafford. We have him at wide receiver 18. If he is without Stafford, we talked about this earlier in the show. Where do you move him in the wide receiver rankings?
Well, catching passes from Matthew Stafford and I think it's Chase Daniel, massive difference. And then without Golladay, he's going to be the kind of focal point of the passing game with Hawkinson. If Stafford's there, I think he's just creeps inside the top 20 this week. If he's not there, I think you drop him down to a flex play. I don't know. Without Stafford, I just don't see him having a big game. He's going to be touchdown dependent, in my opinion.
All right. So one more wide receiver question.
Okay.
The Pittsburgh three-headed monster. We have Juju at 24. We have Deontay Johnson at 25, and we have Claypool at 27. Are you confident in starting any of them?
If I had to go with one, I think I'm going to take the trendy one and take Claypool, just because he's big. He's Roethlisberger likes to look for him in the end zone. Juju, kind of disappointing this year. Deontay Johnson has his health issues. So for that reason, I think I'm going to go with Claypool.
All right. So a few tight end questions.
Yeah, let me hit you with a tight end question.
All right.
So Gronkowski, he's been kind of a surprise in the past few weeks. How high would you rank him? Does he crack your top 5 at the slim tight end position?
I do not think so. With Antonio Brown, if all 3 receivers go, I think he's very touchdown dependent. I have him at 8, assuming Chris Godwin doesn't go. If Chris Godwin does go, I'd have him at wide receiver 11, a risky tight end 1 play. Yeah. Oh, did I say wide receiver? I meant tight end.
Okay. So let me hit you with another one. A player that you have on a couple of your fantasy teams, Hayden Hurst. A lot of mouths to feed there. We have him at tight end 10. Would you go tight end 1 range this week? Is he a for sure starter?
I don't know if Calvin Ridley's playing this week. He did not practice today. If Calvin Ridley doesn't go, I think they rely on him a little bit more. If Calvin Ridley does go, I think he's at most a low-end tight end 1. If Calvin Ridley doesn't go, I'd probably put him mid to low tight end 1. What about you?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I probably lean more towards high-end tight end 2. The position is just so bare. Not many options. I think you're kind of forced to play him if you've got him, unless you somehow have, you have a Hawkinson on your team, or you picked up Gronk or something like that. Maybe you scooped a Robert Tonyan and you want to consider him. I don't know. It's a tough one. But,
Speaking of Tonyan, you have him at tight end 9. I have him at tight end 16. Why are you so high on him?
Well, he's looked good. He's had a couple of down weeks, but other than that, he started out the season on a touchdown heater. Seemed like every week he was finding the end zone. Last week he looked good. Rodgers likes to look for him. My only concern is with people like Alan Lazard coming back.
And even Jay Sternberger has been taking away some of his shine.
He has for sure. But I don't know. Tonyan's look good. I'm a semi-believer.
All right. So one more question. I have Jordan Reed at tight end 6. I'm super high on him just because I think San Francisco will be. I talked about him earlier, leaning on the run. When they're not leaning on the run, they're usually passing to their tight ends. And without George Kittle there, I think he is a mid tight end 1. You have him at 13. What's up with that?
Well, Nick Mullins, very inconsistent. Jordan Reed, very injury prone. The whole offense is, not very encouraging. I don't have a whole lot of confidence. They play tomorrow, Thursday night. They got the Packers coming in. I don't know. I just see the Packers kind of running right through them. The one upside I could see is if they get behind and Nick Mullins is actually having a decent game, he's going to look towards Jordan Reed, especially with Brandon Ayuk out. The receivers, they look like Division III roster. No one else to really throw to. Maybe they hit McKinnon out of the backfield a little more. I don't know. I just don't have much trust. What do you think about him?
Yeah, I think he's definitely a tight end 1 play this week. I might be wrong, but I'm kind of banking on that. All right, so that's all we got for our rankings. You want to end it off here, Nathan?
Yeah. I appreciate you guys tuning in. We're posting stuff on the website. We're getting a lot of views on the website. It's blown up way faster than I thought. We're approaching 500 followers on Twitter. Massive thanks for everybody listening. If you made it this far into the podcast, thank you so much. Keep posting questions for us on Twitter. Like I said, the YouTube is coming. We'll announce that at a later date once it's really up and running. And be sure to keep an eye out. Maybe we'll squeeze in another podcast before the weekend, possibly.
Yeah, possibly.
All right, guys, that's about it. Thanks again for tuning in to episode 2. We'll see you next time.
Peace.